I came across this CNN panel clip discussing Donald Trump's recent comment on the plane crash in DC and how DEI may have had some effect on the outcome based on recent recruitment policies that the Biden admin brought in when they took over, wanting to recruit less white air traffic controllers. So this led to thousands of air traffic controllers who didn't were unsuccessful getting jobs in the air traffic control arena based on they were too white, and the policy at the time was to make the workforce more diverse, regardless, it seems, or to the detriment of having the most qualified people employed, because anybody who's on a plane flight, I'm sure, would want the most qualified person to be offering up instructions in those towers, as opposed to you can't even see them anyway. Whoever they look like, however they look, whatever they look like, or what their cultural or sexual preferences might be, it's a job based on high skills, high skill level and ability. So this discussion, Greg Foreman on from the Black conservative perspective gives a good breakdown here on what the real problem is when it comes down to it, with the Democrats failing to open up their eyes and seeing race everywhere, race at the bottom of everything, and not actually leading to fair arguments that would reach conclusions that make sense. I don't know how some of these non-liberal or centrist, in some cases, right-leaning guests, actually, there's normally not more than one, two maximum on these CNN panels, how they manage to, constantly be being jumped on, hardly given the chance to speak, with the host of the show not necessarily playing the role of mediator and being the actual, one doing the pushing back on the embattled non embattled guest. So anyway, you have a look at this. I think it's a great example of problems we're facing with the media in general, the liberal leaning media, and how some of these decisions that are made and the way things are portrayed can lead to real world consequences. Have a look. Tell me what you think. Please like, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments, and here we go.
This is why this show is such a challenge for me, because I really am. And I've been on this show and criticized him many times. I've been on this show and praised him. In the end, how do we get beyond how we look? How do we get beyond how we sound? Because in the end, we all have a right to a point of view, and I respect yours. Regardless,
I just don't respect the gaslighting and the bad faith conversation.
I also think you cannot talk about getting beyond all of those things, race, hyphens, whatever it is, when at the highest offices of the land, you have someone saying, because there is diversity, there is a lack of merit, there is a lack of quality, there is a lack of experience. That is a racist view, that people who have characteristics that they cannot change about them, that don't tell you anything about their intellect, about their experience, are by definition not experienced. Do you understand that?
Yeah, that is a complete and total straw man, right? Essentially what Abbey Phillips is trying to do here is that she's trying to say that President Trump is, first of all, blaming race. Blaming DEI is not blaming race, okay? DEI is about these programs that are incentivized to make a workforce more diverse at the expense of competence and merit. That is what it's about. It's about the program. It's about the ideology. It's not about any one specific group of people. It's about the ideology in and of itself, right? But again, what really blows my mind about this is that these people don't see that this same line of argument that she's using, which is that you can't scapegoat people based off their race, okay, and immutable characteristics. You should not do that, which is not what Trump is doing, by the way, okay? Again, blaming DEI is not saying, oh, I'm blaming black people. No, it's about the ideology behind it. It's not the actual people, it's the ideology. But regardless, These are the same individuals that have no issues with telling white people that just because you're white, you're racist. Because in their minds, it's only acceptable to scapegoat a whole group of people by race, right? It's only acceptable to do that if they're white. But if they're not white, though, you can't do that. That's racism. But it's totally fine to blame, white society and white supremacy for everything that goes wrong in this country, right? For everything that happens. It's totally fine to prejudge white people, even though you don't know them. But just because they're white, they're racist. Okay? That is a commonly accepted worldview in these liberal circles that they have zero problems with. They don't push back against. But Abbey Phillips is purposely being ignorant of the overall point because she doesn't want to engage with what Frank Luntz is saying here, which is that ultimately at the end of the day, calling people racist and sexist for simply not agreeing with something, you're never going to win people over with that. People are not going to agree with it. And ultimately, if you want to move past race, then you have to stop focusing on race unnecessarily. DEI unnecessarily focus on race when it comes to the workforce. And it's not necessary. And when you focus on race, what you're going to get is that you're going to get more racial tensions. You're going to get more chaos. You're not going to move forward as a society with this focus on race that an ideology like DEI calls for, especially when you're talking about who gets a job, right? Who's able to get into certain positions of power and who's not. It's a problem. It's an issue.
I do, because I listen to this. I hear this and I internalize it. And for those who feel like they're being marginalized, we have to do more. I agree with you.
It's not even just about being marginalized. It's just about recognizing
I just said I agree with you.
I know. I'm saying, but look, I'm not trying to use academic. I'm not trying to use academic language to talk about this. I'm just saying that there are people. Look, a couple days ago, there was a Harvard-educated Olympic track star was told that she wasn't qualified to have gone to Harvard, that she was basically a DEI admit to Harvard. I mean, that just from a human
that's
perspective,
wrong.
that is
we
wrong.
all agree
right?
that's wrong.
May I ask you a question
we
about
all
this?
agree with that, but there's nothing I can say to you on this panel for any of you that's going to satisfy
No.
you.
May I ask you a question about
that's
this?
the problem.
So you're saying Americans felt alienated by the way Democrats talked about
And
some of these things.
Yes.
Okay. But do you think that this is the antidote? I think that's the question here. I mean, you can be critical of terms that Democrats have used, but it's not clear to me how this approach is better. In fact, it seems exponentially worse to be scapegoating, whether it's hyphenated Americans or otherwise, any group of Americans for this tragedy, to be purging government data from websites under the guise of DEI and rooting out wokeness. I guess that's where I think there's a bit of a disconnect here. It's like,
well, again, you're not scapegoating a group of people. You are basically saying that there's a problem with a certain ideology, and a certain ideology leads to subpar results. Again, it's not about a group of people. It's about an ideology. Again, this is what these people refuse to acknowledge. And it's so annoying to me because this is not hard. This is not hard, but I think they do this on purpose.
I agree with you.
okay.
I agree with you. And you're probably surprised. That's the goal in all of this. How do we get to the point when we are judged by our merit, when you're judged by our performance? I've had two experiences. Number one is my house almost burned down in Brentwood. I wasn't even there to see it. And I want the best people possible to be on the front lines fighting that fire. I landed 55 minutes before this plane landed. I could have been on it. So I feel it. I hear this and I get it. And you're correct and you're correct. The question is, do we beat up on it and yell about it and complain? Or do we try to get a solution? Do we try to get beyond it? And the problem is, there's nothing I can say that's going to convince you.
Of course not. And this is why you should not have told them that they're correct, because they're not correct, right? Boohoo, whine, and cry and racism doesn't make you correct. The solution is to get rid of DEI. That's what President Trump is doing right now. And again, they're going to cry racism about it, and they're not going to engage in conversation about this in an intellectually honest way. So, I mean, I don't know. Frank Luntz, yeah, I think it is kind of pointless going on the show, right? Because they're not going to agree with you because they want to keep the ideology due to the fact that they see not having DEI as a form of discrimination, even though DEI in and of itself is a form of discrimination, whether they want to admit it or not, it is. And if all of these DEI hires, if they're actually qualified, which is the argument from these people, then they should have no problems getting a job, right? They should have no problems keeping their jobs or getting another job that pays them a similar amount of money if they actually have real skills and if they are as qualified as these people claim that they are, right? I mean, everybody should want meritocracy. I think that there is fundamental disagreement in regards to how to get there. Okay, and what that looks like. For them, for the race hustlers, meritocracy looks like racial discrimination against whites because they see whites as having a leg up over everybody else due to historical discrimination and racism. That's the way they see it. But what they don't understand, which is what the Supreme Court laid out when it came to their ruling overturning affirmative action, is that the remedy to past discrimination is not future discrimination. Future discrimination just creates more discrimination, and it's just a never-ending cycle, and you don't actually really solve the problem, which is discrimination in and of itself. Right? You can't solve discrimination with more discrimination. You solve discrimination with no discrimination, right? You just stop discriminating, okay? And you let society fix itself because that is what happens over time, okay? That's what happens over time. You let people compete amongst each other, then you're going to have the best of the best is going to rise, regardless of your skin color or your race. So in an ideal world, you don't want white people being held back because of their skin color, just like you don't want black people being held back because of their skin color. You don't want anybody being held back because of their skin color, period. And the only way you can get there is through eliminating discrimination altogether. Meritocracy. That's it. But that's not what these people want. They don't want meritocracy. They don't want that. And that is why, they're boohoo-whining, crying racism, and they're so upset about this because ultimately, for them, they see meritocracy as a form of discrimination against so-called people of color, which tells you everything you need to know about their own self-confidence, right? And the ability of so-called people of color.
So let me know what you think of all of that. Like and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you again on New Idea here at Corner Speak. Be good, be safe, be creative. We out.